Once upon a time in 332 BCE, there were two incredible sieges that took place during the reign of Alexander the Great. These sieges occurred in the cities of Tyre and Gaza, situated along the eastern Mediterranean coast. Alexander, the ruler of Macedon and Greece, led his army of around 35,000 men on a grand expedition across the Hellespont to invade Asia Minor. After defeating the Persian army at the Granicus River and conquering much of Asia Minor, Alexander turned his attention southward. He aimed to conquer Egypt, securing his southern flank before continuing his march into the vast Persian Empire. However, before proceeding, he needed to secure the Phoenician coastal city-states of Syria. This would enable him to use their ports for his own fleet and prevent the Persian navy from launching an attack on Greece. Among the Phoenician city-states, Tyre held immense importance. Ruled by King Asmilk and located in present-day Lebanon, Tyre consisted of two parts. The main city was situated on an island, separated from the mainland by a wide channel. The island's citadel boasted towering walls up to 150 feet high, making it seem impenetrable. Alexander initially intended to bypass Tyre, but he knew he had to capture it to prevent Darius' fleet from using it as a base. Alexander also predicted that once Tyre fell, the Phoenician ships would switch sides and support him. However, the Tyrians were confident in their defenses and rejected Alexander's initial attempts to negotiate a peaceful resolution. They believed that a prolonged siege would buy time for Darius to gather a new army and campaign in Asia Minor. The Tyrian leaders saw Alexander's overtures as a sign of weakness, killing his heralds and throwing their bodies over the city walls. This act only fueled Alexander's determination and garnered support from his generals. In January 332 BCE, Alexander easily took control of mainland Tyre and began the siege of the island. He ordered his engineer, Diotis the Thessalian, to construct a massive mole, a wide causeway, from the land to the island. The mole, around 200 feet wide, required wood from the forests of Lebanon and rubble from the demolished structures on mainland Tyre. Alexander himself reportedly worked alongside his men on this ambitious project. The Tyrians, however, sent ships filled with archers to disrupt the construction efforts. In response, Alexander commanded the construction of two colossal siege towers, each towering 150 feet in height. As the mole progressed, the towers moved forward with it. But one fateful night, the Tyrians sent an old horse transport ship rigged as a fire ship, laden with combustible materials, against the towers and the causeway. The towers caught fire and were destroyed. At the same time, a fleet of smaller Tyrian ships attacked Alexander's men on the mole and destroyed other siege equipment. Undeterred, Alexander ordered the construction of two more towers. He then traveled to Sidon to secure additional ships to support the siege. Gathering a formidable fleet of 223 ships from Sidon, Cyprus, Rhodes, and other Mediterranean city-states, Alexander prepared to attack Tyre. He placed 4,000 hoplites recruited from the Peloponnese under the command of Cleander aboard these ships. Alexander himself commanded the right wing of the fleet, while Penetagoras commanded the left. The Tyrians, aware of Alexander's intentions, initially planned to engage the Macedonians at sea. However, upon seeing the size of the approaching fleet, the Tyrian admiral changed his strategy and decided to protect the two narrow entrances to the island's harbor instead. The Tyrians sank multiple ships side by side to block both entrances. Alexander focused his offensive actions on the smaller Sidonian harbor entrance, approximately 200 feet wide, but he was unsuccessful. The Tyrians later reinforced their block ships with heavy iron chains. With Alexander's fleet present, the Tyrians could no longer attack the mole with their ships. Instead, they resorted to using catapults against the mole and the Macedonian siege towers as they came within range. Alexander's forces responded with their own catapults. Although setbacks occurred, the mole steadily advanced and eventually reached the island. Protected by the towers, the Macedonians used battering rams to assault the citadel's walls, but the Tyrian defenses remained steadfast. Alexander had also planned a naval assault on Tyre, equipping large platforms mounted on barges with naval battering rams and catapults. This assault managed to create a breach in the walls, but a sudden gale arose, sinking and damaging many of Alexander's vessels. During this lull, the Tyrians demolished buildings and dropped the debris over the walls to keep the naval rams at bay. They also devised drop beams and grappling irons to hook and hoist the Macedonians to a gruesome death. Alexander's forces had to clear the debris from the water to allow the assault craft to approach the island. The Tyrians countered by pouring bowls of red-hot sand onto the attackers. Eventually, Alexander's naval rams broke down a section of the wall, and infantry stormed into the breach. The Tyrian defenders put up fierce resistance, but in the end, Tyre fell in late July. The Macedonian troops, enraged by the length and intensity of the siege, showed no mercy. Around 8,000 Tyrians died during the siege, and another 7,000 were slain afterward. Approximately 30,000 inhabitants, including women and children, were captured and sold into slavery. With Tyre destroyed, the Macedonian army set off on foot for Egypt in July or early August. On their way, they encountered the fortress city of Gaza, strategically located on the only route between Egypt and Syria. The governor of Gaza, Battus, refused to surrender, leading to difficult siege operations. The siege engine sank in the sandy terrain, and the defenders often sallied out to destroy the Macedonian siege equipment. During one of these skirmishes, Alexander was wounded in the shoulder by an arrow. Alexander once again called upon Battus to construct an earthen rampart encircling Gaza. In just 2 months, the Macedonians built a massive rampart topped with a wooden platform. A breach was eventually made in the walls, and Macedonian troops entered the city. Mining operations and a tunnel were also carried out to gain access. After intense fighting, Gaza fell. The Macedonians reportedly killed 10,000 defenders, while the women and children were captured as slaves. Battus, the governor of Gaza, was captured and subjected to a brutal death, being lashed by his ankles and dragged behind a chariot around the city walls. The successful sieges of Tyre and Gaza showcased Alexander's mastery of this type of warfare and further solidified his reputation as an invincible conqueror. Despite the challenging circumstances, Alexander's strategic brilliance prevailed. It is worth noting that during these operations, Darius III, the Persian king, did not attempt to disrupt Alexander's supply lines, which worked in Alexander's favor. The sieges of Tyre and Gaza left a lasting impact and even inspired future military leaders, as evidenced by Cardinal Richelieu of France drawing inspiration from Alexander's tactics at Tyre for his own siege of La Rochelle in 1627.